Ikiwa kweli serikali inaweza kuwa na matapeli, basi inaonekana hata sote tutaisha.
Sasa labda serikali ielezee ni watu gani inapeaga, sababu sisi hatujapata hata dururu.
Wale wakuu wanatumia walemavu wapate pesa, wao wajenge majumba, wanunue magari makubwa.
Lazima kuna watu wanakula, kwa sababu huwezi jaza fomu ambao hujui inaenda wapi, alafu kisha mtu hakuletei pesa, hakuletei majibu. Si lazima anakula pesa.
In the outskirts of Nairobi, we meet a 30-year-old Daniel Wakori, who for the last 22 years has been locked up in this dimly lit room, chained in this corner like a prisoner, sometimes like now, whistling what his mom says are tunes that resemble some of the hymns in church. Many families with mentally handicapped children keep them under lock and key, hidden away from the rest of the world. This is often assumed to be out of shame, but it is sometimes an attempt to keep them out of harm's way.
Nakukula kila kitu. Akishikwa ni njaa, ukimtoa anakula mpaka nyanzi. Anataka ugali sana. Ile unga ya pakiti mbili, pakiti anamaliza yote ukipika.
One woman who chose not to lock up her mentally handicapped daughter says she now wishes she had. She says she could not afford to pay someone to keep an eye on her daughter round the clock. About a year ago, while she was away from home, a neighbor raped and impregnated her daughter. The 14-year-old girl has now given birth to a baby girl she cannot take care of. An extra mouth for her mother to feed. The woman says despite registering and joining several groups created to help persons with disabilities, she has never received support from the government.
Tulikuwa na hiyo certificate ya chama na tukatoa pesa. Na hiyo certificate ikatoka. Sasa badala ya kupeleka kwa serikali ndio tujulikane na serikali si aliweka. Hata sijui alipeleka wapi. Sasa hiyo ni njia moja ya kutunyanyasa.
A mother among many others being robbed, as a government with very little accountability continues to release funds without following up. A weakness that creates loopholes for corruption to reign free in the disability movement, leaving thousands to suffer, as a few unscrupulous individuals benefit from money meant for this special group of people. Our investigations into how money for this special group of people is being misappropriated led us to Laikipia. We wanted to get a first-hand look at an organization for persons with disabilities whose records had raised questions about their activities and how it had spent over 6 million shillings in the construction of a basic ecotourism center in Nanyuki. Posing as potential donors from a non-governmental organization, we meet this man, Julius Wamathaga, the chairperson of the group United Disabled Persons of Laikipia, UDPL. He explains to us that UDPL was partnering with Kenya Association for Empowerment of Disabled People, KADEP, in the construction of this ecotourism center for persons with disabilities in Nanyuki. KADEP went to UNDP for the initial funding to kickstart the project. The UN body disbursed 1.5 million shillings on 24th April 2008. The government, through the National Council for Persons with Disabilities, has funded the same project to the tune of 4.1 million shillings. This was paid out to UDPL in 2 phases of 1.1 million shillings and later 3 million shillings.
The 3 million, although it is still not getting enough, is the one which is doing this finishing, painting, making the toilets.
National Council Director Phoebe Nyagudi admits that 4.1 million shillings was disbursed to UDPL and argues UNDP did not complete the project.
It was being done by UNDP, they never completed it. To an extent that even some sections were to be undone because it had stayed for a very long time and it had not been what? We could not continue with the structure the way it was. It had to be brought down.
This center has been under construction for 5 years and according to the UDPL chair has used up more than was budgeted.
The other project that we have been given by National Council of Persons with Disabilities is now leading to 4 million, as you saw that later.
Yes.
That only money for the project, and 2 million for the donors. Let's see, that is a total about 7 million.
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay.
We begin to suspect the project has been left incomplete on purpose to attract more donations. Proof that this may be the case soon emerges. Shortly after we leave Joseph Wamadhaga, he calls my colleague whom he thought was the country representative of a non-governmental organization that could fund the UDPL project. He explains how they could embezzle funds together.
Kama ni kununua kitu unataka kununua, unanunua gari ya 1,100. Kununua gari ya 100 na pengine ulikuwa umeandika kwa proposal unanunua gari ya 150 na imefaulu, imeingia gari. Kwa nini hii ya 50 usijia vile utatumia na ile record iwe sawa na ile kitu ilikuwa inatarajiwa kufanyika bado inaonekana ndio hii?
Lakini mimi unajua mimi si mlemavu.
Mambo ya ulemavu hapa kuna mambo ya mlemavu, hapa ni binadamu. Kwani wewe una tumbo na mimi sina tumbo na mlemavu wako na tumbo na ule mwingine ako na tumbo. Hii ni mambo ya kazi.
Na hizi risiti tutatoa wapi?
Nini?
Risiti za kuoneshana.
Wewe ndio utaniuliza, mimi nitajua kule zitatoka. Lakini lazima tufanye kazi, sawa my dear?
Okay.
This is the man to whose group the National Council has sent millions of shillings. Reliable records in our possession indicate that huge amounts of money were withdrawn in cash from the UDPL account shortly after they were deposited. Joseph Wamadhaga, a man who has mastered the art of deceit. We decided to track down Wamadhaga's other partners, CADEP, which we were informed had sourced the initial funding for the project from UNDP. Still posing as potential donors, we meet Eunice Kahoy, who is the Secretary General of CADEP. She led us to this building in Westlands that she claimed housed their offices. She confirmed that they were working with UDPL on the ecotourism project. Kahoy and the chairperson of CADEP, Julius Nabende, inform us that they do not make cash withdrawals of more than 10,000 shillings.
What we do is we deal with checks, and then any amount above 10,000 shillings cannot be withdrawn cash. It must be checked.
And yet their bank statements tell a different story. Huge amounts of money are withdrawn in cash. CADEP has received millions from international donors to fund projects for persons with disabilities. On June 14, 2011, CADEP received 4,487,170 shillings from the Australian High Commission, huge amounts of which were withdrawn in cash. From the National Deaf Children's Society in the UK, CADEP has received over 4.6 million shillings, amounts that were also largely withdrawn cash. CADEP has also received slightly over 2.8 million shillings from UNDP. What is more shocking, we were later to find out the officers Eunice led us to believed belonged to CADEP did not belong to them. They belong to Center for Policy Research.
Uliza soja. Kuna ofisi tulikuwa tumeandikia proposal CADEP. CADEP inadili mambo ya disability. Walituambia wako room number 204. Eunice Kahoy.
Are these people con artists who have earned the trust of international donors and are siphoning money meant for persons with disabilities?
We are not aware of CADEP. We are aware of UNDP funding.
The plight of people with disabilities has become a business opportunity to many that sell the idea of helping them to unsuspecting donors. People with disabilities continue suffering despite billions of shillings coming from both the government and donors. It is, however, clear that the government needs to put its house in order and donors need to be more careful before they fund organizations claiming to be supporting people with disabilities. In the suburbs of Nyali, we come across a terrible secret. Some of the people to whom the money goes cannot be trusted. Take this man, 63-year-old Richard Murunga, a former boxer. He is the brains behind DT72 International, a non-governmental organization founded in 2009 that received donor and state funding to help persons with disabilities. Dick Tiger Murunga won a welterweight boxing bronze medal for Kenya in the 1972 Olympic Games in Munich, hence the choice of name DT72. We went in search of Murunga and his grand idea in Nyali to develop a 27 million shillings water empowerment project for persons with disabilities. Behind this rusty gate is the headquarters of DT72 International. We find our way in. The only person here is a watchman. DT72 International was one of the organizations that received money from the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Development in 2010 towards a 27 million shilling water project. The organization was inaugurated in 2010 by the then Minister for Gender, Children and Social Development, Esther Murugi, taking memorable shots with Murunga. Its founder has since gone missing. Murunga disappeared soon after receiving the 2 million shillings and a known amount from donors believed to be close to 10 million to develop the water project. Efforts to track him down have proved fruitless. He is now said to be a man on the run, being sought by his creditors.
The outstanding rent was 6 months at 85,000. We sent the auctioneers. The time they came here to attach them, they never took even, I think it was less than a week. They disappeared at night. And that was the story.
Despite receiving 2 million shillings from the government and millions more from donors for his 27 million shillings project, the former Olympian has nothing to show for it.
Maji wapi? Kama angekuwa ametekeleza project ya maji, kwanza hiyo kazi ya maji ni nzuri sana kwa walemavu. Maana haina msumbuko. Mlemavu anakaa, kazi inafanyika pale.
His claims of helping the disabled, not one penny, not one shilling that he's ever raised has gone to help the disabled. People donate money in good faith, thinking that the disabled are going to get help. That money never makes it to them.
The water project was supposed to be opened in Likoni and was to serve 500 persons with disabilities.
Ile miraji ya maji iko wapi? Miraji ya maji hakuna.
We further discovered that prior to the opening of DT72 International, a group of persons with disabilities from Mombasa staged a demonstration alleging Murunga was a conman.
Mombasa disabled came together and they called me that they wanted the media houses to go and cover the demonstrations condemning Dick Tiger as a conman who is misusing them both in Kenya and abroad to get a lot of donations in their names, yet they don't benefit with that money. So there was a big demonstration. They condemned Dick Tiger.
Why did Minister Murugi open an organization fronted by a man of dubious character, which had its offices closed shortly after he received funding?
Every time a minister is called, you expect your officers have done the groundwork. So if I go, if the officers didn't do their groundwork, you cannot blame me. And I'm not going to refuse to open a center because the officers have given me false information.
She points an accusing finger at the National Council and asked us to question the council's director, Phoebe Nyagudi. Nyagudi is a signatory to the fund from which DT72 International received the money. Did she mislead the minister? And if so, why?
We vetted him. We used the gender and social development officers in Mombasa. He was vetted, yeah, and he's not the only one. People can come and tell you what they'll do. You go and look at their projects. and you find that they are projects that are needy and they should be assisted.
Nyagudi, however, accepted free accommodation from Murunga at the Sanana Holiday Hotel when she traveled to Mombasa for the launch of the organization.
They invited us and told us that, in fact, when we were there, not that I didn't have my own way of taking care of myself, but we were told that we are going to be housed. In Mombasa, we don't know the areas. When you are told where you can go and put up, you just go there.
Despite the demonstrations and numerous complaints, the National Council went ahead and authorized funding. The director of the National Council accepted free accommodation in Mombasa from a man who was being investigated, and went ahead to not only have the minister officially open the offices in Mombasa, but also disbursed 2 million shillings. A director who the current minister insists is doing a splendid job.
I'm not the one who appointed her, but I've since accepted that she can do a good job, and I've seen what she's doing. Yeah, she's done a good job. She has.
But instead shifts blame to the council members.
If DT 72 was being given money and it had a problem, how comes the council did not veto? Because when the board of trustees approves, the list also goes to the council.
The minister adds that the National Council is a house that needs to be put in order.
What I want to admit is we have a weakness in terms of monitoring and evaluation, more so from the disabled council. That is something we need to strengthen. That is a weakness.
The former boxer is now believed to be hiding in Juba, South Sudan. This as a grim picture is painted across the country. In this homestead in Githunguri, you would think there is no one home as the house is locked. But on peeking through the window, we find this young girl, 10-year-old Wangare. Where she remains all day and night, even when nature calls. A neighbor agrees to open the door for us and informs us that the child's mother, a casual laborer, is away working. Mary, who brought us to this homestead, works with people with disabilities in the area and explains that despite their efforts to get funds from the government, for families like this one, they have not been successful.
Every year during the time budget is being whatever, we can hear that some money have been released for persons with disability. But we usually ask, who are these persons with disability? Because like now in Githunguri, we have so many groups, but even if we inquire from one another, we find that the situation is the same, so we are not helped. So we feel that if that is the situation in the whole country, maybe some money falls in the wrong hand.
Many of the over 1.3 million persons with disabilities have been registered with one organization or the other, often after paying a registration fee. They are enticed with the promise that they will begin to receive some of the government funds set aside for social protection. Reports of one such scandal takes us to Kapenguria town. Here, persons with disabilities have been turned into a money-making project. Locals say a man of God who had rented an office at a local church launched an organization called Daipenem, meant to help persons with disabilities. More than 1,000 persons with disabilities from Trans Nzoia County signed up and paid 750 shillings each. The clergyman allegedly collected more than 1 million shillings from persons with disabilities. He was arrested and later released, and has since gone into hiding. In his former office, we find people searching for him.
Kunyanyaza mtu mlemavu ni kama ni mtu hana utu. Sasa akipatikana, I think he should be made to pay. Fulfill hizo promises na tena agaramie gharama zote ambazo walemavu wameinkaa.
Alikuwa anasema anaregister hao na 750 na anaahidi mambo mingi. Aliahidi mambo ya NHIF, NSSF, vitu kama hizo na vitu vikubwa.
It appears few internal controls were put in place when the government set up the fund. The result is a fund plagued by suspicious activity and cases of corruption. Another sign of the confusion in the way the government handles social protection for persons with disabilities is the fact that there are two national funds: the National Development Fund for People with Disability under the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Development, and the National Fund for the Disabled of Kenya under the Office of the President. Both bodies receive funds from the government. Why are there two national funds, both being funded by the government? The National Fund for the Disabled of Kenya in 2010 sounded an alarm over low applications by persons with disabilities to collect some 100 million shillings given by the government. Does the NFDK lack capacity to fulfill its mandate? The minister informs us that a piece of land given to NFDK is yet to be developed.
Even the land we gave them in Taveta, they've really not decided to start developing.
Two national funds, with the National Fund for the Disabled of Kenya even getting funds from donors as well. Disabling greed as thousands continue to suffer. Some die. Sophia Wanuna, KTN.